Eileen?
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eileen Barkus Hoffman, a commissioner with the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, and a fan of one of our co-moderators, Denise McKenney, as well as Antoinette Turner. It was the idea of Kintsukuroi that started all this. And basically, you'll see from our slides that over the centuries, Zen masters developed an argument that pots, cups, and bowls that have been damaged shouldn't simply be neglected or thrown away. They should continue to attract our respect and attention and be repaired with enormous care. This process, symbolizing a reconciliation with the flaws and accidents of time, reinforcing some big underlying themes of Zen. The word given to this tradition of ceramic repair is Kintsukuroi or kintsugi. If I'm a little wrong on pronunciation, I believe we may have some folks in our audience who can correct me. It's also called, it's also called unpretentious and aged, especially if it has a weathered quality. I have also heard the expression golden repair. And when we get to discussing labor management relations, we'll be hearing about golden repair and how it's transformed. It means literally to join with gold. And in Zen aesthetics, the broken pieces of an accidentally smashed pot should be carefully picked up, reassembled, and then glued together with lacquer inflicted with a very luxuriant gold powder. There should be no attempt to disguise, camouflage the damage. The point is to render the fault lines beautiful and strong. The precious veins of gold are there to emphasize that breaks have a philosophically rich merit all their own. And we'll be hearing today about a relationship that was in repair and how it became much, much better. So without further ado, I yield to my colleague, Denise.
All right, thank you, Eileen. The origins of Kintsukuroi are said to date to the Muromachi period, when the shogun of Japan, Ashikaga Yoshimitsu, broke his favorite tea bowl, and being distraught, he sent it to be repaired in China. But when he got it back, he was horrified by the ugly metal staples that had been used to join the broken pieces, and charged his craftsmen with devising a more appropriate solution. What they produced was a method that did not disguise the damage, but made something properly artful out of all of it. So I want to tell you before I go to Commissioner Antoinette, we want to talk a little bit about the manifestation of resilience. So what makes things that have been broken and then they've been repaired, they're proven to be resilient. So when we talk about resilience in the workplace, we're talking about authenticity. So in a resilient relationship, you are authentic. The second thing is adaptability. So in a resilient relationship, you're able to adapt. Self-care. In any relationship, we have to take care of ourselves so that we can be better at what we do. Support. We want to make sure that in our roles of labor and of management, that we have support to keep us going. Energy. We have to have energy to do our bargaining, to have our labor management meetings. So we have to make sure that we're in good form in order to do that. We also have to develop networks or working relationships. So sometimes I know if you're new in a particular position, whether it is labor or management, just to have a network of friends or network of colleagues from other unions or from people who do the same thing as you. Okay, So I'm going to turn it over to Antoinette right now.
All right, everybody. So what does the form art teach us about labor management relationship? And apologize in advance for my voice. I just have these horrible allergies.
It's
right now.
allergy season. It's
Allergies.
okay.
I'm sorry. Kintsukuroi teaches us that your better broken places can help be mended much stronger and better through this process. It's even better for your labor and management relationship when it's even used better for its membership. And today we have two great people that's going to be with us, that's going to share their relationship and how they were able to mend the broken pieces back together through this Kintsukuroi. Today we have Gino Reno.
Gino
Renne, who is the president of UFCW Local 1994. And then we also have Miss Roberta Phillips from she is from the Montgomery County Public Library Systems. And they're going to speak with us today.
Nope, I'm from
PG
Prince
County.
George's County Memorial Library System.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, did I say Montgomery?
Yes, you
I'm
did.
so sorry.
Thanks. Got to correct you.
Sorry, thank you so much
Sure.
for that correction. They're going to speak with us today and share with us how they were able to bridge and work together on their relationship building. So with no further ado, we're going to turn it over to Ms. Phillips and Mr. Renne.
Can you all tell us a little bit about yourselves? We didn't want to leave anything out. Ms. Phillips.
Sure,
Tell
I'll
us a little
start.
bit about yourself, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Renne.
Absolutely. So I'm happy to be here. My name is Roberta Phillips. I'm the CEO for the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. I've been here since 2019, and as everyone knows, started off working on workplace culture, and then we had a pandemic and social unrest and a myriad of other things happen. So while I didn't have a lot of experience negotiating with the union or collaborating with the union, I was in a union in Michigan as a teacher. So I was familiar with the tenets of labor unions. But I immediately set out to introduce myself to Gino and to build relationships, because for me, my leadership style is about building relationships to move forward in a collaborative spirit. Gino?
Yes, thank you. I want to begin by thanking both LERA and FMCS for inviting Roberta and I to join in this important conversation. Just as background, I'm a rabid Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I graduated from University of Pittsburgh with administration justice degree, moved to Maryland to pursue my public safety law enforcement career, and ended up becoming a labor leader. I've been in elected labor leadership position since 1980, fully engaged in all aspects of labor relations, going on 42 years now. My passion, obviously, is being part of the labor movement. It's, I guess, what I was meant to be, and it's been a great ride. I'm still having fun and enjoying collaborating with great minds as Roberta and others on this meeting today.
Okay. So Gino, before you met Ms. Phillips and before you have the current relationship that you have now, can you tell us a little bit about your prior relationship with management?
Yes, it was a shattered vase that needed fixing. We organized this particular bargaining unit back in the mid 90s. Just as background, my particular local 1994 represents both public sector and private sector. We have about 9,000 members that our contracts cover across the state of Maryland. And this particular unit was one that took a lot of work to get organized and ultimately under contract. From the very beginning, we were met with extreme hostility from both the Board of Trustees and the senior management team of the library system. That continued, quite frankly, and took various forms, both at the bargaining table and in the workplace under the original director that we organized the unit. Her predecessor continued the same type of antagonistic relationship. I think if you were to ask me why, I think none of the folks that were either in the original senior leadership team and or part of the Board of Trustees, as well as the following team, really didn't understand the dynamics of unions, didn't really accept the legitimacy of the decision that their particular workforce made to be organized and secure a legal voice in their workplace. So it was always a struggle from beginning until Roberta came along. We had to fix that. And what we ended up doing, we began engaging with the Board of Directors directly and sort of not froze out the director, but pretty much went around her. And we were successful in building relationships and a level of trust and respect with key trustees that came to understand and accept that the system, in order to continue and to prosper and meet the needs, the service needs of the community, that they needed new leadership. And we partnered in a national search with them. Our members were very engaged. They conducted a survey asking the workforce what they wanted in a new director. And voila, we came across Roberta. We obviously highly recommended her, and they did the right thing and offered her a position. I guess you've been there now, what, a few years, Roberta? How long has it been? It's been a bit now.
Since 2019.
Okay.
So going on my fourth year.
Time's ticking.
Mm.
So she inherited, I would consider a lot of baggage from the previous administration. She understood from the outset that the relationship between the union and the management team was fractured, but she also understood for her to pursue her vision of what she believed the Prince George's County Memorial Library should be in terms of meeting the needs of the community, that she had to take charge of changing the relationship. And she mentioned that she reached out to me and we had a series of meetings. We came up with an informal blueprint on how to move forward together, but we also understood that we were going to have to spend a lot of time capturing the confidence of the workforce because they were battered. There was virtually no trust and confidence in the leadership at the time that she took over, and we had to rebuild all that. But the point, I think that the takeaway from here, from this conversation today, one of them should be to those out there listening and trying to figure out ways of moving forward together with management, is never give up, and be prepared to be creative, but also be prepared to take some risks, because it's going to take all those elements to get where you need to be to meet the needs of the workforce so they feel comfortable, confident, and safe to do the best they possibly can each and every day they come in to serve the public. Because at the end of the day, we share that fundamental goal, and we have to invest on both sides to make sure that that goal is met.
Okay, Gino, we've heard from you. Roberta, when you first came into your position, can you talk a little bit about any difficulties that you encountered?
Sure. Yes. So, I was charged with changing the culture, and I met with staff. Our first staff day was titled Your Voice Matters, because essentially our staff did not have a voice. It was a very top-down management system, and I knew that wasn't going to create a culture of trust. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear of retribution from senior management, which I just thought was really shocking. That's just, again, not my leadership style. So what we had to do is we had to come up with a methodology that would stop the conversation from being us and them. Because the us and them were indeed the same people. It was our staff. It was Gino's members and my staff, but guess what? It's the same people, right? And so it wasn't an us and them. It's how are we going to work together to move forward? And I think that language is still a struggle for some folks, whether they're staff or management. But we're working, it's always a work in progress, and we're working towards, this is a collaborative approach. One of the things I did, especially during COVID, is started to break down silos, because even within our organization, there was, this is my lane and this is your lane and this is my department and this is your branch. When in reality, we are one system. It even says it in our very long name. We are a system whose goal is to serve the community and to move the social impact needle. So a lot of it was, allowing staff to have voice. And what Gino and I set up were many, many different layers for that to happen. And I'm happy to talk about them unless you had another question.
Well, we're gonna ask you to talk about them, and we're gonna go toward the end of the presentation. We're gonna ask you all to comment on certain aspects of things that you may have done, but please do so right now, Roberta.
Okay, so we realized that during COVID we needed a health and safety committee, and we had union members and management members and people from all areas of the system become a team. We created quarterly town halls where we start with a very brief subject and allow our staff to have questions answered. And the questions are answered by Gino and I, because we are creating a united front for the staff. We're in this together. This is what we're saying. We had many MOUs that we created to make sure that staff was safe and was taken care of during the COVID pandemic. We created a teleworking policy together. It wasn't my policy, it wasn't their policy. We created it together, and then it was approved by the board. And we're also thinking now we need to relook at that. How do we do that? We use our LMRC. We use those meetings as a way to continue the conversation long after the contract is signed. And I think, this year we even did joint advocacy together for our county budget. It was the library board, a union member, and myself usually talking to county council. So the idea behind all of these things are twofold. One, we are doing it together in a collaborative spirit. And two, we are giving staff a voice about what's happening in their work environment. I have really talented and passionate staff, and we want them to stay. We want them to be happy and healthy at work. And I think the third thing would be that Gino and I remain open to talking with each other about issues that I might hear or that he might hear. And, we got each other on speed dial. It's okay to call me and say, hey, I heard this from the members, what's happening? And I can respond. Or I said, I heard this from staff, is this really true? And he's like, no, I don't think so, but let me dig deep and find out. So there's this constant conversation happening, and we're not excluding the staff. The staff are creating those conversations. And I think, you know, that two-way street, that building of the relationships, the breaking bread together, as Gino likes to say, is really significant in making sure that we do what's best for our staff. And I think the fact that Gino and I both want what's best for our staff is critical. You know, I'm not trying to say, oh, I'm not going to do that. I don't care about my staff, because I do care about my staff. He cares about them too. So we really have the spirit of, hey, what can we do to move the organization forward, make sure that our staff is engaged and they have a voice, and that we are creating this really unique relationship that allows our staff to be happy and healthy and productive at work.
Well, let me mention something before we move on. Now, it sounds like you and Gino were on board with this new collaboration. Now, you know, in any union management relationship, there are always going to be people that have been around since time started, that may have distrust of something new. So how did you handle the diehard people that just thought that union and management should fight?
Well, one thing I did is I made some changes in leadership, which helped greatly, because some of those people who were very antagonistic are no longer with my organization. Secondly, I think the idea that, you know, Gino and I both reiterated time and time again, this is a clean slate. Like we need to start new. And do we have some people who still have baggage from how things were handled? Yes. And we're trying to move them towards a more neutral spot, right? And I feel like there's three spots. There's the people who adopt the change, the people who are in the middle who are kind of like, I don't know, and the people who are your naysayers who are like, I'm not changing anything. Those are the people we're trying to move along. And the more we gain their trust, the more that they are starting to not forget, but forgive the past, because it's not my past, right? I'm a new leader. I'm not the one who, you know, might have dragged you through the mud, but I'm saying we can make it better. And Gino is saying, hey, Roberta's not that last leader. We can do this together.
So you had support from Gino.
Absolutely.
And that's a critical piece. You know, the two of us, given our respective positions, I believe, have an absolute responsibility and obligation to be change agents. And we're very much alike in the sense that we don't tolerate a whole lot of BS from our folks, right? And I mean, to your question, I probably had a handful of members that just they were leery about the relationship between the new developing relationship, because they were so used to fighting all the time that they began to believe that that's the way the relationship should be. But I said something a little earlier. I never gave up on those folks. We didn't alienate them, nor did we ever give up. What we did is talk reality radio with them and called their BS when they would start that. And we would take the time to say, look, I respect your opinion. I can understand why you think that, but let me tell you that you're not fully accurate on your thoughts. And you have to produce reality, right? You can't just talk about, hey, we're going to do A, B, and C, because if you don't produce the reality that you're discussing or promising, then you are going to lose the confidence of the folks. And what often happens is the vocal minority begins to destroy the thinking of the majority, unfortunately. So Roberta and I both spend a lot of time dealing directly with our respective teams, her management team, my shop steward team, and the elected vice president, on talking about the reality of a particular situation and what they're complaining about at the moment, and giving clear examples of, okay, maybe we're not doing it the best, but we sure are doing it better than a lot of other places. Particularly during COVID. I mean, all of us were rewriting the book during COVID, right? And a lot of jurisdictions didn't do it so well. But I must say, the library, Roberta was the first one, I believe, agency in her county to shut things down, completely shut the system down. So when the members came behind that and said, look, she's not doing enough, she's not doing A, B, and C, I would always remind them, yeah, but she shut down and she was the first one to do it, and you're out of harm's way. And that's kind of how, Roberta, I think that, and I know you do that with your managers, that's how we kind of maintain the balance with the naysayers and our critics, if you will.
Right. And it's, it's kind of rewriting the script, right? The script is they always do this, or I don't like this. So how do we turn that around and say, together we can achieve this? So it's really looking at an abundance model rather than the scarcity model. For example, we don't have enough staff to open all these hours. Guess what? I changed the hours so that we had enough staff. I mean, and it ended up being easier for the community because now all my libraries are open the same amount of hours, same times. That was something I was willing to do. So, I think most places dropped their mask mandate. We didn't. We still have a mask. We still have plexiglass because my staff said that's what makes me feel safe. And I said, okay. And it's really thinking through the requests that the staff members have, and they voice those, of course, through Gino and the shop stewards, with what is really possible. There's some things I simply can't do because I don't have the funding, or I don't have, X, Y, or Z. But I try to figure out, Gino and I try to figure out what is something we can do, rather than say right off the bat, nope, can't do it. We try to come in with something we can offer, and then we listen to see if somebody else on the staff has a way that they can level that up for us. So when we started curbside, we did it at just a few libraries, work out the kinks, we piloted it, and then everyone says, hey, this looks good, I think our branch can do this too. And slowly we got everybody on board. We didn't say, hey, we're going to open every single library for curbside. We did it in a way that got people used to it, where they could, think about what worked and what didn't work, and then talk to their peers and say, hey, we got this. It's really easy. We'll show you how to do it. So
Okay.
it's a lot of demonstration. It's a lot of piloting. It's a lot of prototyping.
Okay. Roberta, I hate to confess to this, but I really think that I have a book that was due many years ago. And I'm embarrassed. I said, my goodness, if I go on screen, Roberta will say,
you know what? You can just return it because we are fine free.
okay.
And so we will welcome the book back, and there will be no harm, no foul.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. All right, Antoinette.
Sorry, still muted. I just want to ask Gino a question
Sure.
before we move on. How did the members did they finally come on board to the new change on how you were going to start communicating with management? No, not the adversarial mindset.
Yeah, it took a little bit. It took a little time, but I want to believe, and I think I'm right in making a statement. I'd say about a high 90% of our membership has now reached a point where they see that having the collaborative relationship that we're having and building on that is leading to a better system for them and the patrons, right? I truly want to believe that. And I'm sure I would know if they felt otherwise. But it goes back to what this is all about, though. That this particular session is about. We had such a bad relationship that I understood the skepticism of the members in terms of moving in a different direction. I understood it. I appreciated it. So I was, not just me, myself, our leadership team and the staff assigned to the system, were very patient, if you will, with the members and gave them the space and the safety net to vent and voice their concerns about one thing or another. And it took a lot of work and a lot of patience, a lot of meetings, but I think we're on the other side of it. And it's good for the members, it's good for Roberta and her team, because they could pay more attention to managing and less on, trying to resolve worksite disputes, et cetera, et cetera. It's good for the community, obviously.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that. So that's a good segue into the next question that we wanted to ask you both. Moving forward, how would you advise other organizations that might be in the same situation that you are in with the fractured relationships? What would be some of the advice that you would give to others?
Yeah, I think the first thing is the leaders of the organization have to meet. They have to understand the mission of the organization and what the staff is either afraid of or in need of or is asking for, because you need to know where you stand before you can move forward. And what are the issues? For my staff, it was trust. It was building a culture without fear. It was having a voice in what was happening. And it's not a democracy. There are decisions I make that I don't have time where it's not a decision for staff, but there's lots and lots and lots of things that staff have an input on. And for me, it was about building cross-functional teams across the system that work together in every single different job description capacity to move the system forward. So that mutual respect that's up on the screen, the communication, of course, I think for us, it was building that relationship so that Gino and I could then show what that relationship looked like, right? Because as leaders, we model behavior. If we're antagonistic with each other, they're going to see that and they're going to say, oh, well, Roberta and Gino can't even get along, so why should we, right? But when they see us working as a unit, as a collaborative partnership, then they see that we both have the same best interest. Again, it's not about us and them. They're the same group. The union members are the staff. The staff are the union members. They're not two different bodies, right? So for me, I think starting at the top by building the relationship, understanding what's being asked, what are the issues, what are the opportunities in not just the challenges, but what are the opportunities, and how do we start to mend those fractures?
Awesome.
Let me just add to that, if I may.
Please do, Gino, please do.
One of the things Roberta and I, we do a lot of venting with one another. And, she'll call me and, a little frustrated and, I'd listen. And then when she's done, we'll try to figure a way forward. And I do the same with her. And I think that, quite frankly, has helped cement our relationship, because we know we could be open and honest with each other and not worry about one or the other using that against us or playing off on that, et cetera. And those conversations are very private and confidential. And I think that's necessary and needed in a relationship, having that level of trust in one another. But we have created what we decided to have standing regularly scheduled quarterly town hall meetings. Is that, they're quarterly, right?
Yes, we have one next week, in fact.
That's correct. And those meetings were a product of our kind of venting with one another because, we were still getting complaints from both sides, management and the labor side about, her and I making decisions that were without the benefit of input from the others and so forth and so on. So we said, you know what, let's just deal with this head on.
Are these
So
are
we
joint meetings, Gino?
I'm sorry?
These are joint meetings with management and
Yes,
labor?
it's the whole
Yep.
staff.
Oh, okay.
So we have the entire system, town hall meetings every quarter where Roberta and I are there. If we have a particular subjects of interest at the moment, we'll do a presentation, so forth and so on. But the intent of the meeting is to allow both sides to ask any question they may have and get the answer from the two top leaders of the organization. So that takes a lot of mystery, right, out of the equation.
Yeah.
Eileen, do you have anything that you
Yeah,
want to
Sure.
give in terms of advice?
yeah, I would also want to ask, does the situation have to be so bad that people will want to change? The reason is sometimes we at FMCS have a little checklist to see if one side thinks, hey, I've got a new idea, and the other side thinks things are going along okay. It's hard to make change. But when both realize that there's a real problem and their very survival is at stake, they tend to be a little more cooperative. So I just wondered, when you talk to your colleagues, even in the library system or in the unions, what would be the characteristics of an organization, staff and union to consider before they start this new approach?
Well, I'm a change agent, so I welcome change, and I want to hear what my staff is seeing, because I'm not on the front lines, right? I'm not in every branch. I can't be in 19 branches at one time, but they hear what customers are saying. And for me, it's about addressing the community needs, not what the librarian thinks that the community needs, but what the community is telling me they need. So in public service, this is really critical. Because we want to address those community needs. So the staff will come to me and say, I see this need. And for me, it was about creating this open door policy, this conversation. My staff can email me. Apparently they weren't allowed to email any the former CEOs, which I think is really interesting. My staff will email me and send me some good news. They'll email me, hey, this is a concern that wasn't handled. What should I do? And sometimes, if it's something that can be managed by senior management, I might give it to them, but I always reply to my staff within 24 hours.
Right.
And so I think it's about, again, being open to that change. And even if you think nothing's broken, you still might have staff or members who say, hey, I think this might be a better way of doing it. And it's really incumbent on leadership to be okay with hearing what people say, right? I don't know everything there is to know about everything. That would be a really false assumption on my part. But when I hear somebody say, hey, our customers really are asking for color printing, then I might say to my IT director, what's the cost? And, let's see if we can manage this. Well, now we have color printing for our customers, because that was something a staff member said we needed, right? So a lot of it is about having those conversations and being in an organization that is welcome to suggestions. And that doesn't mean everything people suggest is adopted, but I'm willing to listen, and I'm willing to say, hey, what's your data? What's your proof? What are people saying? Why do you think this is true?
Let me ask a question. Of the things that are on the side, mutual respect, regular communication, agree how to disagree, being proactive in resolving problems, setting up an LMC, and focusing on productivity. I'd like to ask Roberta and Gino, what is your probably top one?
Mine is mutual respect.
Yeah, I would pick the same thing.
Mhm.
If you don't start off on a level playing field with mutual respect, you really can't go too far. You're not going to get too far.
And that's just not the respect Gino and I have for each other, but that's me respecting my staff and their voices. It's him respecting the steward's opinions. It's us thinking about what our organization, the library's organization, is in helping lift the community. So those things all start with mutual respect. And then the other ones you certainly have to have. And Gino and I disagree on a lot of things. I'll say, I can't do this. And he's like, well, what about this or this or this? And I said, well, maybe I can do those. So sometimes he'll talk me off the ledge. Sometimes I'll talk him off the ledge, right? And again, we couldn't do that if we didn't have that mutual respect and that trust.
There's another element of mutual respect that I think sometimes we labor relations practitioners may overlook. There's got to be a mutual respect on an institutional level. The labor side has to have respect and understand and appreciate management prerogatives and what their role is. Okay, their role is to run a particular agency, right? Department, whatever it may be. The flip side is management has to have respect for the union as an institution. They are the elected representative of a particular workforce. And I've been, as I said earlier, I've been doing this for 42 years. That was one of the biggest problems we were having at the outset with prior administrations. They never accepted and respected the institutional role of the union. And that's very important. And sometimes I think we may overlook that. And both come with separate sets of prerogatives and authority and so forth and so on. And I see too often, this is my observation, too many labor relations professionals on both sides personalize and internalize things. You need to leave all that at the door. When you enter in a room and engage with your counterparts on the management side, you can't bring your personal biases, or if they say no, you become offended. Your job is to try to get around the no and get management to come to your side. Just like Roberta will tell you, she had to convince me to do some things that were new, particularly during COVID. So mutual respect, I believe, goes far beyond the respect between the individuals.
Could it be safe to say that Gino and Roberta, that because of the mutual respect that you all demonstrate to each other, that's been helpful between the frontline supervisors and shop stewards?
Yes, because, I will say to some of my folks in leadership, I'll even say to them, that's not the way we're looking at it now.
Right.
Because they too have baggage. Some of my folks were with my predecessors. Some folks, realize that I have a very, very different management style than some others. That I want to have the staff voice. For example, one of my leaders presented a code of conduct for customers, because it was a committee. And I said, has this entire staff looked at this? And they said, no, why should they? I said, because the entire staff needs to make sure that these are indeed the code of conduct we want for our customers, because everyone, not just this committee, experiences things different with the public. And sure enough, they came back with some fabulous edits that the committee had not thought of. But was leadership unhappy with me for saying, yes, we had to send this to the whole staff? You bet. They were ready to give it to the board for approval. I said, no, this hasn't been vetted by the staff. So that was one example where, you know, I have to push my leadership group too sometimes.
Yeah,
All right.
and we do, you know, sometimes we have to do the same with our frontline, you know, with the stewards. Get them to understand that this may, you may not agree with the approach we're going to take with management, but this is the best, in the best interest of the work of the membership. So you do have.
I wondered, Denise, if this would be a good time for questions from the audience.
Well, almost. I want to just look at this one little quote, and then we're going to engage everyone in asking questions. If you cannot get through breakdowns quickly, I can't see it for people. Can somebody else read the rest of it? I can't see it.
Yes, you waste time. If you're having the same breakdowns over and over, it means you are not learning.
Okay, all right. Then thank you very much, and we're going to move on. Thank you, Eileen. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so I can see everybody. Okay, so we're going to open it up right now for questions. I think there may be some in the chat, but would anybody like to ask our panel members any questions? Okay. All right. All right, I see some things in the chat, but if you'd like to elaborate on them, that's fine. Someone says, would love for folks to attend our panel on Saturday, 10.2, broadening the definition of job quality and work scheduling quality symposium. And Allison says, I will be discussing our attempts to measure these very things in Illinois for use in distribution of public money. All right, and thank you all for the kudos for a great panel. I think that the panel is outstanding. And of course, I'm a little bit, you know, a little bit not neutral when I come to my colleagues, and I see that there are some colleagues in the audience, and thank you all for showing up to our panel. Does anybody want to say anything? Or I'm going to ask my esteemed colleagues who may have labor management committees if they'd like to offer something to Roberta and Gino moving forward.
I think you're doing a great job.
Yeah, I do too.
Have you had any challenges now that where you still have to deal with COVID, but are there any challenges now that you would talk about or that you can talk about?
Well, there's a couple I can't talk about, but
Right.
I think, you know, I think for us too, you know, there are some challenges with Maryland law, for example, which says you can't be a librarian unless you have a master's in library science. Well, what I did is I created a new job title that did not require a master's of library science, and they're called public services specialists, because I wanted to promote people who were doing great work and who had the experience, they just didn't have the degree.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have decided they want to go back to get the degree. Others are like, this is great, you know. So I think there are some challenges with some outdated staffing models that I am trying to push through and work through and learn about best practices, because some of them are very traditional to my industry that are really not meeting the needs of what the customers have. The other thing I will say is that it's really critical for me to be able to allow my staff to use their talents and passions at work. And just an example, I have a young lady who's a gifted lyricist and rapper. And she said, how can I use this skill? And I said, create a rap for our summer reading program. And she did last year, and it was fabulous. And it was part of our opening video and our opening dialogue. I have another person who really is invested in helping our trans community. And in her particular branch, there is a large community that use the library. And she created something called the Butterfly Project, which is helping getting this particular population job skills so that they can move forward in a place that's safe and accepting. And she introduced this to me, we got her funding, and the project is on its way. So those are things that staff have done in ways that will not only make them happier because they're using their passion and their talents at work, but it has this huge effect and outcome for the community. So that's just like a win-win for everyone. And I try to encourage that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the two biggest challenges that we're facing from a labor perspective, it's one combined two, but I call it one challenge, is recruitment and retention in public sector. It has really gotten to be a huge challenge, at least in the state of Maryland. It is, and I'm sure it's the same thing across the country. The other big challenge is obviously getting sufficient revenues to properly run the organization and adequately or competitively reward the workforce so you can deal with the recruitment and retention because they're time. And we're at the bargaining table now. And in fact, I won't go into specifics, but Roberta called me this morning and shared with me certain limitations in a particular subject matter at the bargaining table. And I understand it. And I threw out an alternative. And we're going to explore that together that may be able to get us through the next year or so. But we're having the same conversations and challenges with all our public sector employers.
There's something to be said for sustainability, funding sustainability, because we know, this is, since COVID, this is the great resignation. This is, everybody wants to work in different ways now. And we have to be able to offer some of these, working choices that we might not have considered, 10, 15 years ago. So I think some of the challenges are the challenges that we're having in society, a very high inflation rate, folks loving their job, but maybe wondering if the grass is greener on the other side. And really thinking about how do we sustain our workforce? How do we sustain our funding? How do we make sure that we are moving forward in a way that's ultimately going to lift up our community, and at the same time keeping our staff employed and housed and all those other things that everybody struggles with.
I'm just curious with artificial intelligence and all of those developments, how both of you see the future of libraries. They're changing as to what they can offer. And I'm just, if you wouldn't mind just look into your collective crystal balls for what we can expect.
Well, I think one of the things that's happening is that, we encounter many different languages, right, in the course of a day. So perhaps artificial intelligence will be the translator at the desk for the staff member. We do have staff who speak Spanish, some who speak French, but there's a myriad of languages that are coming into our buildings every day, people speaking Farsi and everything else. And so maybe artificial intelligence will be that vehicle to help us, since we probably aren't going to have somebody who speaks 6 languages on staff every day at every branch, right? That's an example I'm thinking of. There's automation that people are doing that's helping with some of these things. I think there's things like if we're not open the amount of hours that people want, people are investing in lockers that are outside the library where people can pick up their books. They don't have to engage with the staff member, almost like the old red boxes for videos. So I think there's a lot of interesting technology and AI that's coming to the fore that could affect how we do a better job with the community, especially with this really global community that we're seeing in every city.
Okay. Well, it is 1:54, and I know that we need to move on, but I'd like to thank Roberta Phillips and Gino Renne. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Commissioners Turner, Hoffman, for joining me here, and all of the FMCS people in the audience that chose to attend. And so, having said that, I'd like for you to think about your work relationships and those management labor relationships that you may have. When things get broken, think about Kintsukuroi and think about how to keep what you have and make them joined in a golden way to make them more important and beloved. So thank you very much for attending, and you have a wonderful rest of the day. Eileen and Antoinette, any last words?
Well, I'll just put in a plug for our agency. We're going to have a big conference building on labor management cooperation and hearing other stories. I want to thank our panelists, though, so much. Without you, there wouldn't be a program. You've really made it worthwhile. And just, I think it's July 13th and 14th, a very inexpensive Zoom produced panel. So I think you're going to enjoy that as well. And thank you, Denise.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right.
Stay healthy.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, where's the end recording? Let's see. Okay. Oh, stop recording. Okay.